All right. Everybody got some food, got some breakfast, people on Zoom, hopefully you have something. So welcome and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett, the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB or IFOB. It's great to see you all here in person and welcome to those of you on Zoom and recording because we have a lot of people asking for the recording too. So we have Brooke Stewart, our Director of Communications, will be our tech expert and an online chat moderator. Brooke, raise your hand. There's Brooke. She's our conductor. She keeps our trains on time. We'll be recording this program for later viewing and sending contact information out to you. We can also share the slides that we're going to have as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Breakwater Group at Morgan Stanley, Mascoma Bank, Maine Biz, and our host Barry Dunn for this facility. Thank you. In a few minutes, I'll ask Jack Clark or Tanner Howard from Morgan Stanley and Andrew Cook to say a few words from Mascoma Bank. Maine Biz was not able to join us and asked that I pass on the following message to you all. Maine Biz is proud to support the Institute for Family-Owned Business and its work helping Maine companies grow and thrive. At Maine Biz, we believe that sound financial strategy is the foundation of every successful business, and we're excited to support today's program focused on building strong financial leadership. Thank you for being here and for investing in your company's future. And if you're all going to 40 Under 40 tonight, I will see you there with Maine Biz. We have our newly minted 2025 25th anniversary Maine Family Business Award program. And on page 42, you can see our programs that we've already scheduled for next year. This is our final one for our how-to series. And then we're starting our new financial series called Mastering Business Finances, Part 1. It's a very long title. Bookkeeping, Controller, and CFO review of the accounting spectrum. So it's a mouthful, but it's a good topic. We're excited to have our speakers, Jacques Santucci here, President of Opus, and our board treasurer. Also, we have a few other board members. If you all want to raise your hands, thank you for being here, helping us. And then we're also have Nick Sampson, Managing Director of B&M. So welcome.
Thank you.
At the end of this program, we'll hand out our survey that we have here. And we really appreciate you guys filling that out, letting us know your thoughts, and particularly for this one, because this is the start of this Part 1 series of finances. What would you like for Part 2, probably Part 3, anything? So you guys are the ones driving the forces for what you might like to hear next time. Our next, God bless you. Our next event, which is really fun. How many of you have been to our Christmas, holiday, now New Year party? Anybody who's been? Yes? What's your favorite thing about it? Networking? No, it's New Year's. All right, we kick off our New Year's.
It was after the holidays.
Yes, I think it's fun. And one of my personal favorites, if you haven't tried it, is the mashed potato bar, because you can have all kinds of mashed potatoes, regular and sweet potatoes. And we have cookies and cookies to go. So you can take those. So now I'll turn it over to Jack or Tanner, which, yeah. All right, Jack.
Yeah.
Jack's going to say a few words and then we will have Andrew and then we will toss it to John. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack Clark. This is Tanner Howard. We're with Morgan Stanley, part of the Breakwater Group in Portland. Gary Bergeron leads our team. He's a board member with all you guys. Yeah, happy to be here. We work with a lot of small family-owned businesses. So always happy to support the community. I personally come from a family that's owned a small business down in Connecticut for over 100 years. So I understand the industry a little bit and, have been part of it for several years. So really happy to be here and happy to support. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Cook. I'm the main market leader with Mascoma Bank. Pleasure being here this morning. A little bit about Mascoma. We're a $3 billion mutual that's headquartered in Lebanon, New Hampshire. We've been in existence since 1899, but expanded into Portland just before the pandemic. I'm here with my colleagues today, Kelly Dorsey and Amberlyn Esperanza. And as a bank in the market, we're focused really on commercial financing as well as treasury services. And we have about 400 employees from Burlington to Portland. But what's great about the Portland team is I think all 11 of us in the office are Mainers born and raised. So while we're a bank from New Hampshire, we continue to grow, and a group of Mainers are looking to do that. So thank you.
I'm going Nick Sampson. I lead our CAS practice of Bacon Newman Noise. CAS stands for Client Accounting Advisory Services. You'll hear today about a lot of the service offerings we have, which really goes from bookkeeping to controller to CFO services. And we're pretty agnostic as a industry, so we kind of do everything. If it's real estate, insurance, life science, you name it, we kind of fill a role there.
I'm Jackson Tucci at Opus Consulting, and I'm also the treasurer of IFOP. Thanks for supporting the organization. It means a lot to the community. So how about we kick off the clock here, done with the presentation. So Catherine and I were talking about, and the team were talking about all the programs that we need to offer for the business owners. And one thing that I've seen for the past 20 years as a professional service provider and in the financial world is a lot of companies don't really see the difference between the bookkeeper, controller, and the CFO. And I probably wrote a blog 13, 14 years ago about that difference. And that blog post is the #1 every year, years after years. And so we're talking about, what is something that is probably a good topic for people to talk about. This is it. What does that mean when you need financial assistance in a business? And so Nick and I were kind of brainstorming about how can we explain, and then we came up with that notion of spectrum of. He came up with that notion of spectrum of accounting functions, and that's what we're here to talk about today. But maybe we should start asking you guys, what do you think? What do you see is your need? Do you need a bookkeeper? Do you think you need a CFO? What does that mean for you? Mike, you want to start? What in your mind? I know him, so. Just
Well,
ask
Zach,
you to get a drink
to
next
be
time.
honest with you, we've got our bookkeeper that comes in once a week and cuts checks, and as long as I get that check on Wednesday, then I think everything's working in the accounting department. But, it is a good point, is she's a bookkeeper, she's not a CPA. So, yeah, it's interesting to kind of hear different business perspectives of it. Mine's in commercial real estate is fairly straightforward. The checks come in, checks go out,
Maybe just to set the room, how many of us have a bookkeeper that we have for our business? Yeah. Or what about, a controller? Controllers here? Any CFOs? Okay. A little bit of everything, so that's good.
I'd be interested in what is at what revenue point or different work construction, that might be more complex than another industry. When should you start searching for a full-time CFO versus fractional or no CFO?
We get into that as we get into the CFO side.
Mhm.
Do you want to flip it to the first slide, maybe? Alrighty, so a lot of words on this slide, but we'll start from the left, and I think we'll work our way to the right and answer your question there where it gets to the CFO finance / CFO business insights. The business insights is more non-financial, so industry specific. How do you run a construction company and what things should you be looking for? Versus that CFO on the left-hand side is more, let me review your contracts, let me make sure, our finances are sound. If you're bonded, maybe being audited, and you have to care about that. A lot of things in construction, you have to worry about, like your WIP schedules, construction in progress, stuff along those lines. So we'll get into that once we get to the right side of that accounting function. For now, we'll go back to our transactional managers there, which are our bookkeepers, which really, or staff accountants, whatever you want to call them, which really make sure everything in your financials are there, and they need to start somewhere, right? Want to speak about that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, so to Mike's point earlier, right, the bookkeeping and accounting part of the spectrum here is the day-to-day of the company. There's paying invoices, making sure that the invoices go out, making sure that the cash comes in, but it's the payroll is happening, the 1099 are sent at the end of the year. That function is not management, right? It is day-to-day operation. The other side of the spectrum, like you were mentioning, is more on the business side. How do you grow the business? Not saying that the bookkeeping or the accounting part doesn't grow the business, because if you don't have it, it's not going to grow. But it's meant to help the rest of the company to move on with the administrative part of the function.
I agree. Maybe so we can tailor this a little bit. I heard real estate, construction. What other industries do we have in here right now?
Insurance.
Insurance.
I do have not an industry, but a comment from the chat is I have a small business of 10 people. I am the bookkeeper, controller, and CFO. We have an accountant and tax person. We are preparing to transition our 25-year business to the next generation, and we're identifying roles and responsibilities at this time.
Yeah, it's very common in small businesses for that owner to wear all those hats, right? And I said, one thing I'll say about that is if you were to have someone fill that bookkeeping role, think about how much more time as a business owner you can spend trying to grow your business or, tightening around all those business functions that you have in that industry. So
in that question to me, and Mike mentioned it, I think there's a misunderstanding here. We heard bookkeeper, controller, CFO, and tax preparation or tax accountant in the same sentence. And you mentioned earlier, we don't have a CPA. Well, those are very different things, right? A CPA is public accountant. It's to prepare taxes. Not saying that somebody who's got a CPA doesn't have the ability to plan and to have strategy, but it's tax. Right, and it's got nothing to do with the growth of the business. In your question here, if one person, to your point, is the bookkeeper, controller, and CFO, it's just like if you think about in a construction company, right? The person who designed the house, the person who buys the material, the person who's going to build the house, and the person who supervises is the same person. You can't grow it that way. I mean, you get too much function on one person, and usually the day-to-day of any activities kills the rest of the day, right? You can't step back and look at how much cash do I have, what's my budget for next year. You can invest the time to think about hiring the right people, and grow the business. So as a company is moving on, passing down to the next generation, they probably should sit down and look at where do we want to go here, and understand that a bookkeeper is day-to-day. The other side of the spectrum is growth of the business. And I always say to my clients, a CFO should not cost you money. The CFO should bring you money. It's a function that helps you grow the business, find savings, increase the systems, better flow on invoicing, better flow on buying or whatever the business is. What do you think?
I agree with everything you said. I think maybe if you think of that bookkeeper as they're really your checkbook manager, right? They make sure the ends are coming in, money's coming in, the money's going out, but they don't really know what to do with that, or how to act or how to grow with that. And one thing, there's a lot of people that are looking to exit their business too. So you want to make sure that your financials are sound so that you get your multiples that you want when you try and sell your business. Because for a lot of small family businesses, that is your retirement plan, is selling your business. So if you just have a bookkeeper that's been doing everything for the whole year, then your CPA firm comes in and cleans everything up at the end of the year to make sure it's in compliance to file taxes. Well, that means you don't have the controls in place. And when someone comes in and goes through and does their due diligence on your company, they're going to knock down your multiples and you're costing yourself more money than probably if you had a fractional person in there to help you work through those problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. We talk about the both sides of the spectrum, but the controller part in the middle for a small business is probably the most important part. If the right controller is hired, it can act as almost as a way to grow the business. But really the function is to look at are the books done properly? Am I invoicing correctly? Do I have the right control in place? How's my cash? Work on the cash flow forecast, close the books, and then force, quote unquote, the owners to sit down every month and look at the books, or look at the financials, sorry, not the books, look at the financials, look at the projections, look at the budget versus actuals, and start making decisions on what is the future, where do I want to invest my money, what are the trends? Unfortunately, these days we do a lot of turnarounds and bankruptcy work, and it's almost all the time the same thing. That you could have predicted a year before that the company was going in that direction, but either the reports weren't there, or the management didn't want to look at the reports and be objective about what was happening. But if a controller or a small business or family-owned business is efficient, takes the financials and look at what the future is.
So that's your biggest difference between that left kind of dark gray box and that middle blue box there, right? Is your bookkeeper's making sure everything's in there, it's reconciled. I don't know many bookkeepers that go there and do a forecast or a budget for you.
Yeah.
They're not gonna know how to do it. And if they do, it's probably not gonna be a sound one. So that's gonna really hurt your expectations for that following year.
They might not even print the right reports because they don't understand or they don't see the business. So they're just going to print a report that doesn't really show the trends.
That's your biggest difference between that left side and that middle. Is the left side, you're a transactional manager where you're going through and making sure everything's in there and it's reconciled. That middle slide is you have an understanding of financials GAAP, and you're able to apply those to some other business metrics to help those business owners get to where they want to go to. So it's in the question, we asked, when you go from, bookkeeper to needing a controller, or controller to needing a CFO, that's the $1 million question. And also it's also, we take over for a lot of companies that have a CFO in place, and I'm going through with those business owners and we're talking about what they did from their day-to-days. And we acknowledge that maybe they weren't really sitting in that CFO seat, they're really a controller with the CFO title. So it's really trying to define what do we really need or what are we looking for? And then making our statement of work or whoever to go in there and meet those expectations. I think one thing when you outsource versus having someone in there every day is you get a lot more firepower, because if Nick doesn't know something, then someone at a firm will. Or if you don't know something, someone has expertise at your firm. So you can kind of tailor that into whatever model that clients are looking for. And typically when you're a smaller business, you don't need that full-time CFO. You don't need that full-time controller. And you can really tailor that statement of work to just meet those expectations. I want to know where my cash is and how I can budget to make sure I hit EBITDA of $1 million. How do we get there? How do we budget it? How do we go budget to actuals every month?
And what I've seen is in small and medium-sized businesses, usually privately owned, there's also a little bit of self-confidence from the management or the ownership. Most of the time, the owner, manager, president, they know about their industry. They know about construction, they know about insurance, they know about real estate. But for them, the financial part is just something they have to do. And they usually look at it just for tax purposes. Where at the end, and then there's a little bit of lack of self-confidence about what I need to look at, what kind of numbers I need to look at, what are the trends. Either they empower the controller or the CFO to make that to kind of fill that gap, and then help them grow the business. Most of the time, they don't dare doing it because they're not sure exactly how to do it. They don't know exactly what they're looking for. And they end up having a function that's just really just for tax purposes. And most of the time, they even the ones approving the checks, approving the payments, approving all the invoices, which is not really what they should do, right? They should empower somebody to do all that function, and they should have somebody to tell them, those are the financials for the year. This is the budget for next year. This is the cash flow forecast. This is what you need to do, and kind of help them mitigate that lack of either knowledge, self-confidence, or help them just save the time just to be able to predict or help them predict how to grow the company.
Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
How do you recommend going about the search process and identifying what you need to get to that next step in hiring
Yep.
a CFO?
I think like Nick mentioned earlier, need to understand exactly what is the need and what you're looking for. If and probably look for help, because if the person doesn't know what they're looking for, other people can help
Right,
them.
but experience-wise.
But
you know, where-
experience-wise, I don't know if it's, yeah, I guess to me, it's not experience, it's more the talent, the vibe,
One thing I would say is if you look at all the statistics out there that relate to accountants, there are not many left anymore. If you look at who's enrolling into college and who's exiting college, who's set to retire, 75% of CPAs at retirement age right now. So it's hard to find qualified people to come into these functions. That's just reality. For a larger CPA firm, it's hard for us to recruit people because that are qualified to be able to handle what we have. So to your answer, that's a very tall task, to find the right person. And it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for someone that knows accounting, or if you're looking for someone that knows your business, so strategic business insights, the more you go up this scale, the harder it gets. You have a lot of people who can just make sure your cash is reconciled. You don't have a lot of people who know your industry and know exactly what you need to be able to, like, the way contracts should read, what's the industry standard for these? Or the benchmarks at a company that if I'm a $5 million company, $10 million company, how do we benchmark against our, the other people that are around here?
Just make sure I understood what you said. As you move to the right, are you saying that that's where you'll need the CPAs and you have your 70, or are you saying towards the left of that
I
slide?
don't
No,
know.
I don't think CPA is something I think completely different as you're moving around these scales. There are a lot of CFOs who are operational in nature. They come from operations backgrounds, stuff along those lines. They may not necessarily be
Sort of like credential.
A
yeah,
CPA.
credential.
CPA is, you usually become a CPA because you're on the tax preparation
Yeah.
world, right?
Or on a test. Yep, so.
Forget about audit, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Your audit.
Yeah,
Yes.
The outside check and balance, and that's
Yes.
part of why you're the trusted,
But-
okay, fiduciary there.
So, both of us started, in accounting, and I started in audit. I would have never been able to start in taxes, but it's kind of the same knowledge when you start. But then you realize at some point, just like what Nick said, the CFO is more operational, right? There's still an accounting part of it, debit and credits, but the books of the company should not be done just for taxes. They're meant for somebody from an operational standpoint that can read numbers to say, okay, this is what's happening. Where the tax preparation trains you just to look at, how I'm going to maximize my taxes. Sure, very important, but you can outsource that to a professional that's going to do that on a day-to-day basis. The business needs, like you said, somebody who knows the industry, somebody who can, if the goal is to sell the company or buy a company, you're going to want to hire a CFO that's got like a merger and acquisition kind of experience that can raise money or find somebody and then, right? But if you're trying to just grow internally, you want somebody who knows the industry and can save expenses somewhere or have a better workflow or, collect faster depending on the company.
A
I would
business
say-
analyst background.
Business analyst background.
I was just gonna say, there's regularly some confusion, I think, between like the CPA role versus all of these internal roles for a business. And so it's important to kind of remember the CPA is there really on a quarterly basis and then a year-end basis to kind of help assess what you're gonna owe in taxes. They're not internal to your organization necessarily, and most often not.
these features are more internal to your organization, so they're working with you on a daily basis to help get the information for everything you guys are talking about, and to get that information to the tax accountants so they can give you estimates on what you owe for taxes
So I
and your
was-
year end.
Yeah, I think all great points. I'll say one caveat here is if you are being audited by a CPA firm, the auditors have to know your industry and how your accounting functions work. So if you're looking for maybe that controllership role that's more accounting in nature and less business insights, having someone who was previously in the test world, who worked in that industry, are probably know the know-hows on how to do all those different metrics and stuff along those lines. So that's not a bad alternative there, so.
I have a comment, not a
Yeah.
question online. I have a small business also, but we expanded a year and a half ago. We currently have 9 team members and need additional staff as part of our operational team. I am still the bookkeeper, controller, and CFO. We have an accountant that handles our taxes and offers additional financial services. Currently interviewing bookkeepers so that I can delegate that job. I want to be able to make better financial decisions with better financial systems in place.
Yeah. I think the one thing that you need to be aware of is, we keep using the term bookkeeper. They just know transactions. They're not gonna be able to help that person get to wherever they want to go unless they have, that person, the business owner has that institutional knowledge of knowing how to get there. The bookkeeper is just gonna make sure that your checks book is reconciled, your credit cards are reconciled, and this is how we look. They're not gonna be able to project out and help you grow. I think there's a lot of banks in the room here, and they can probably attest to, having sound financials. So if you're trying to grow, you usually maybe acquire debt sometimes, and then you're gonna have covenants on that debt that you have to meet. And when you have that transactional manager, they may not know how to get you to where that is. Where if you had a fractional controller or something along those lines, they'll be able to set those covenant calcs, calculate all those, speak to the bank on your behalf, and speak the same language. And, have both sides of that coin happy with each other. And they can let you know, if we're projecting out this way, we're gonna have a problem with that covenants in 6, 12, 24 months or something along those lines. So it really depends. It sounds like that person needs a transactional manager so they can focus more on the business. But I'd say take it one step forward. They don't need a full-time controller. They probably need someone fractionally to be in there, maybe 40 hours a month to help them guide to where they want to go. And that's where that fractional versus full-time kind of comes into place.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's a real basic question.
Yeah.
I have a lot of it. I work for FL Putnam. I have a lot of fractional CFOs who are my friends who want me to introduce them to business owners. From the business owner side, if you're hiring a fractional CFO, how do you know that they're going to give you enough attention if they've got 4 other clients?
Well, we're
And-
just
and
talking
how
about
is
that.
structured?
We're just talking about that earlier with somebody here. When I started Opus, I saw the fractional CFO, the consulting part of it as professional services. Just like, insurance is providing a service, just like Mike is a real estate consultant, right, at the end. But from a financial standpoint, feels like there's too many, there's a vision of that solo person who's got 4 clients. We 15 of us, there are a dozen of them, right? So there's always somebody who can do that work, because as a company, just like Mike or anybody else here, when you take the engagement in, you have to provide the services. So having 4, 6, 25 clients should not matter, because behind it, just like if that person was embedded 40 hours a week, there's a system, there's a protocol, there's ways of doing things.
I will also say that for the most part, how we have our engagement structured are this teams, it's not a person.
Yes.
So while you may have the head to the team, there's also members underneath it. We at least have 3 people in every engagement that we have.
Yeah.
So if Nick, for some reason, is on vacation and something happened that one week, there'd be someone in there that could be able to fill the role. So we always make sure that we're staffed. We have the bench strength to either acquire new clients or take on additional tasks for a client, so we can scale up, scale down, whatever that engagement looks like. I will say for your solo fractional CFOs, they're not gonna have that same bandwidth to be able to do some of that unless they're on I'll say vacation on their phone doing that or something along those lines. So that's where, going to a company to do it versus not is a
In
plus.
that instance, what you're talking about is redundancy in who you hire for the role. If you hire a solo practitioner, there's no redundancy if that person happens to be, I don't know, having a tiki bar on vacation, which they are due to do, like, we all want to be there. But on the other hand, what you're kind of also, I think, saying, or I'm reading in between the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the arrangement for comfort is really some contract review on who you decide to bring in and making sure that the covenants in that contract for that service are things that they can be held accountable for. So that the baseline, the floor, is the deliverable you want to get where you are on that spectrum. Is that?
Yeah. So
But what's interesting is, though, is you ask yourself the question, but you usually don't ask the same question when you hire your tax accountant or your lawyer or your marketing company, because the financial has that almost personal relationship that you want to make sure that either you have your bookkeeper always there to enter this thing, but having somebody part-time or on a phone call is almost like, like your doctor, right? Right. And so, to me, that's what's happening right now is we're all in that world of short-term thinking. And then people are realizing, well, I need that help, and they need to find the right team, the right people. And depending on how they feel, right, a solo practitioner or having a team becomes a personal choice. But then, there's the pro and the cons.
And so this functions on the right, where a lot of what I did before I successful exited my business.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is if you can get to the point where you've got more of those controllers or what have you in there, you can ride something like the 09 whack to your business and come out so much stronger to the elite sector. But if you don't get there and you're too busy doing data entry, it's a really hard
it's hard to
sell.
grow.
Let alone sale.
Yeah, if you're a small business and you're dealing on that left side so much, you're gonna have a very hard time going that way on that spectrum, because there's only so much time in a day, right? So you can only do so many things, and honestly, you could be spending more time maybe getting new clients, expanding your business versus doing the day-to-day, and you know what, now you're paying, by you doing that, you're paying for that other function. And that's something that I know is scary when you're a small business, because you look at, you don't have as much capital to be able to feel like you can expand. But trust me when I say that if you do go out and you spend more time trying to do that, things start to fall in place and you get less worried about the left-hand side.
The left is the worker, the middle is the manager, the right is the leader. So it depends on what you need, when you need, what size you are, and then after that, acquiring the talent depends on who you are and what you're looking for and how that's going to work. And then you go from having full-time or fractional, depends on your need, on where you're going. For example, a business who wants to sell in the next couple of years and doesn't have a CFO, probably wants to have a CFO, probably can afford it, but having a fractional CFO makes a lot of sense, because then that person is going to be a leader going to meetings and explaining the financials that sometimes the business owner can't. Then if it's a business that's just expecting to grow within their industry, maybe having a 40-hour, a full-time CFO is what they need, because they need that person all the time to go in the plant and trying to optimize the process or something like this. Different talent, but it's really leadership versus workers and the manager in the middle.
I would say I put a 5-year plan on, if you're looking to exit your business, you need to start looking at this 5 years before you exit. Because you're gonna have those, the trailing 3 years, whatever, they're gonna go through your systems and try and see if those all in place, because they're not gonna trust your numbers. And say if you were a business that typically has an average of a 5-time multiple, and then they look through and they look under the hood, they're like, oof, we don't know if we can trust these. Now you just went down to a 3.5 and you cost yourself 1.5 points. And when that's your nest egg, it's a lot of money.
I have someone here that said, we are a 100-year-old building materials business. Currently, the CEO is also the CFO, or takes on the role of the CFO. How do you make a decision to split those roles?
There's a little bit of a personality issue here, and I don't want to get in the middle of it, because it happened to me once, and I said, you should change your controller, and the answer was, it's my wife. So I avoid going in that direction. But in this case, right, you know, the CEO cannot be the CFO and cannot be the COO and cannot be the HR person. So, you know, when if you're the CEO, that means the CEO usually is the leader on the operational side, finding clients, making better products, right? The CFO is the leader next to that person. So that person either go as a CFO or CEO, depending on who they are and how they feel and what's the future of the company. There's a lot of companies that actually, where the CEO is also the CFO, they decide to sell, for example, well, they hire just a CFO just for this, or they hire a CEO just for that session because they need to go on the road and find somebody to buy them out, right? So the title doesn't really matter. It's really what you need to accomplish.
functions of
It's
it.
the function.
I would say all your C-suite should all be working together.
Yep.
Too. So they are an intimate part, but they shouldn't all be working in one function. They should have all their own functions to be trying to grow.
If you're talking about a fractional CFO, I guess what would the entry level or the gateway be? Would it be 5%, 10%, 20% salary of a full-time CFO for, say, a business that we're considering this at least at the intermediary level versus someone obviously that's going to hire a full-time employee that's a CEO, a CFO, sorry.
Yeah, great question. I think it all depends on the statement of work. Like, what are you trying to get out of it? There's a lot of times when I get introduced to someone, we talk through it and I say, it doesn't make sense for us to come into fractional. You need a full-time. So you really need to have a trusted advisor that will be honest with you and say, hey, I would love to do all this work for you, but this doesn't financially make any sense. You should really pivot to having a full-time versus half-time. I can say as far as a fractional, certain roles, you'll notice in accounting functions, they're really busy in the first half of every month. They're trying to get the close done. And you know, those first 15 days, they're just flat out. And the next 15 days, they're just kind of floating out there. And that's where you're spending as a business money on someone not to do a lot of work. So that's when that fractional role kind of comes into place. It makes sense because we'll be able to be a cost-effective role. If you're a business where that person works 40 hours every single week and they're busy, then to be honest, it's helpful to have that person in-house and doing that work because then will be more expensive in those type of scenarios. So you really just need to trust the person that you're talking to as you're going through this process. Let's be honest with you. Because to provide a good service, you need to be able to have that bank strength to be able to pick up that call when they call you at 8 or at 3 or whatever and go through all those calls through the day. And that function.
I agree. It's all about the scope. I had a client years ago that needed a CFO, fractional CFO, because they were losing money. It was a little bit of a turnaround situation. At the end, they were the two owners, they were at the end of the rope, right? They needed to sell, they just couldn't take it anymore, and they needed help to sell the business. Well, I told them, you can't sell the business when you're losing money. You have no value. Or yeah, sure, you can sell it, but it's not going to be what you're expecting. So the engagement and turned into a fractional CFO for a couple of years, where we actually helped them get back on track. So they would stop losing money. Took me a while to convince them to drop. One of their division was losing money, and then we worked through it. And then 3 years later, they were able to sell because now they were making money. They were the operation was sound, and then they sold and then they moved on. The first call and the scope was not when they called and the scope we drafted was not exactly the same. But at the end, they got what they were looking for.
So like a company like ours, where I think we got a few people living in the bookkeeping, accounting management side, like if we were to do a full-time, it's really like, it's not CFO, it's controller is like your
I usually start there. You want to start from the left. If you have someone in that left side, then your next hire is gonna be the middle one. And your next hire is gonna be the right side. That's not the case every single time, but for the 90% of the time, that's how you're gonna want to move your accounting spectrum on your own.
I would agree. You build the accounting structure, you build the accountability, you build the reporting, then you got somebody who then can help read the numbers, prepare the numbers, and then that function's gonna evolve. Sure, there's a personality issue, just like anything we do, but that's how it would evolve.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it would probably be beneficial in that instance to assess the people that are currently doing
Yes.
those tasks, because some of them might be doing the controller tasks already.
Yeah.
And are capable of those
Yeah.
tasks, and then you wouldn't necessarily need to hire a controller, you can just transition tasks
Yeah.
between the people that are already doing the job.
Yeah, my only caveat to that is if just make sure they're qualified before you think about transitioning someone there. Like, what are you trying to get out of that role that's in the middle? If that person that was doing those day-to-day tasks aren't currently giving you those answers, then maybe they have to answer. So just be cognizant of that as well.
There's also an education that the management or the owner needs to understand how to manage the controller or CFO. You can't expect to have somebody kind of loose and do whatever they want, right? So there's that before you hire a controller or CFO, you need to be able to manage that person, understand the language, understand what you're expecting from them. Otherwise, it's a moot point. You just have somebody producing reports for you. If you don't read them, if you don't understand what you're looking for, it's not going to help.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is being open to change.
Yeah.
Right, if you have been, you're a small family business and you've been doing the bookkeeping, doing all this some way for 20 years. And you have someone else come in, they're going to probably make some changes to how those accounting functions work to optimize them. Maybe you've always been doing everything in Excel. And it's very manually intensive. That wouldn't probably be the way when you bring someone in that has that knowledge of how to work accounting functions. They're probably gonna start changing all that, or maybe they change your accounting team so that dark gray to the left area. Maybe they start saying, hey, we don't need 2 full-time bookkeepers, you only need 1 because there's all this software that's out there that can really alleviate one of those roles. So now you're actually, by having that fractional person in there and the bookkeeper, you're actually saving yourself a lot more money too, and you're getting better knowledge. So a lot of times where I see businesses that this is the way we've done it, this is how we're doing it. And then you go in there and you try to like break the ice a little bit and start pointing them in the direction of where things are going now. And all of a sudden accounting functions, you get your reports turned around quicker because you're not manually doing a lot of these items. And you can actually act on how you're performing the previous month and make any alterations during the current month to make sure, November doesn't look like how October went. Or if October went well, what do we do? Let's make sure November can keep following that.
Yeah, I have 2 questions in here. I'll start with the controller since I think you were just on that. Are there specific certifications we should look for when hiring a controller who will be responsible for both financial accuracy and business level insight?
I don't think so. I mean, sure, somebody who went to college, know a little bit about what we're talking about here, right? You can expect, a 16-year-old to become your CFO. It's never gonna happen. But so that you have a little bit of but I don't think there's any accreditation, right? Because it depends on the profile you're looking for. I always say to our clients, at some point, you're not gonna need us. I'll be happy to do the interview for you because I can tell you which one you want and which one you don't want, right? Because there's profile, there's talent, there's experience that's not gonna work for you versus this one.
I would say on those instances, lean on your other advisors
Yes.
for help. So if you have that trusted tax advisor or test advisor, lean on them to say, hey, do you mind like spending a half hour, 45 minutes interviewing this person, asking some technical questions so that we know that they know what a deferred revenue is or prepaid expense or rules and stuff along those lines. So if you have bank covenants, like what comes in those bank covenants and how to calculate those things. Your CPA firm that you use are gonna know those answers and they'll be able to kind of quiz that person on it. We personally, before we hire someone, we have like our own tests that we test the people to make sure that they know what they're doing. First go buffer line.
And I think it also depends on the profile of the person. We had a client, they have 5 locations. And the controller after 2 years had never been to any of the locations. And I said, did you ask? He said, no, I never asked. I'm like, for me, it's a great guy, but it's not the right profile. Because as a controller, he should have said, I want to go check it out. I'm working on numbers all day long. I'm talking to people and I've never been to that location. He doesn't know what's going on. That's the wrong profile, right? The bookkeeper probably doesn't need to because it's transactional. But after the profile for controller and CFO is somebody who is really growth oriented, operation oriented, a little bit of inquisitive about, where the business is going and still keeping in mind having good reports and good control.
Yeah, and then building onto that, the skill set or the certification, I think that's the easiest part to fill in, but as you're moving to controller and CFO, as my past experience as a CEO, that you're seeking a business partner, someone that you will be able to use as a sounding board and ask yourself, when I have a challenging moment, because we're all talking about growth, but there's some challenging moments, can I be in the trenches with that person to model scenarios, get out of the problem and model my thing? So I think the more you go towards the right and the more strategic business partnership, that becomes more about who do I want to be my business partner for the good, for the bad, and really be able to have critical conversation together, not just about numbers, but where do we go from there?
There was another person here that said, on the bookkeeping piece, how much does it typically cost to hire a bookkeeper? I'm a sole proprietor of a retail business. I need a new accountant and could be looking to get a combination of services.
I hate this answer, but I think it depends on the statement of work or what type of industry it is. Honestly,
So a
because,
retail business, a small retail business.
so you're gonna have to deal with inventory, so it depends on how inventory management works, right? They going around counting things, they have a software, is their POS system handling all that? Are the people typing the stuff into the POS system correctly? There's a lot of different functions in business that I can get you to that answer.
I would agree. So we don't advertise at Opus that we do bookkeeping, but we do bookkeeping, but it's usually for a very specific reason. The company's in trouble, right? There's no bookkeeping, you have to rebuild the books, right? And it's a very specific reason. But then, if the scope is different, then, there's a lot of professionals that can do it, and the cost is gonna vary.
Yeah, it depends on what type of institution you go to. If you go to a larger firm like B&N, that bookkeeper's probably gonna cost a little bit more than the sole prop bookkeeper that's out there on the streets. But you may get to more knowledge, you'll have a team on one side versus a sole person on the other. So I think it's a wide spectrum of price there.
Where do you wanna?
Yeah, I would totally agree with everything you guys said. I think that's the number one question we get with a new client that comes in the door. And we always say, let us do a review of your current systems and your current books first, and then we can give you a better idea of what it's gonna cost. And it depends on the scope of work, depending on, if you just want someone to go in and review and reconcile at the end of the month, because you have someone in-house doing the data entry, that's gonna be a lot more affordable than if you want someone to come in and do all your bill pay, all your AR, all your data entry.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation.
Would that initial conversation be like a free consultation type thing typically, or
For
do
our
you charge
company,
for
yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you always,
Know who you
what I
are.
always do is,
I own Philbrook and Associates. We're a full service bookkeeping company.
Okay.
We also offer some of the controller features they're talking about here.
Yeah, gotcha.
What I'm kind of hearing, if I might, is that if the question is talking a lot about what should I expect for cost, like what's the price? But I think that one of that's a trap, because what your
Yes.
answer is what's the value?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
well, that too, and
Ask the right question.
Yes.
yeah.
For where you want to be.
Yeah.
It's not about like the dollars, it's the value.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. That's the first question any of us get as we, go to our prospect. It's really, what are you trying to get out of it?
Yeah.
Is where you need to go. And there's gonna be a lot of difference too in bookkeeping, whereas if you hire someone who's just the sole person, they probably don't have the knowledge of all the technology that's out there to streamline things. So, well, it may be, X amount an hour. They'll be spending 2 times as long as someone who maybe's not quite twice the price, but a little bit more, because the person who's a little bit more has all this technology there to help streamline and compress all that time to do those functions. So it's a trap to just look at hourly. It's more statement of work you to look at and that cost for that statement of work.
And
A business.
that's a great point. Sorry.
Sometimes if you're the owner and the CEO and you're reconciling your invoices every month, you're not selling your. wages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
And you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have when you're a business owner, you have to invest in your employees. Employees are part of your assets. So the question is, how much do you want to invest in that function? And do you want to spend your Saturday nights and Sunday nights doing it? or do you want to invest a little bit of money? So then either you relax or you sell more or you improve your business. It just depends on what you're expecting to get.
And if I might add on to what you just said, because it was really, really important, it is that if you're hiring somebody and it's not working, really look internally at that, because if you didn't delegate,
Yes.
you hired somebody and told them they were the A person to do the job as far as like a grade goes, and then you kind of didn't delegate to them and empower them, so you ended up with an F product, but that's not the person you hired's problem.
The problem is the top.
It's the problem at the top. You've
problem at
got
the
to
top,
be able to
absolutely.
let go.
I actually have the situation right now, and next week I'm gonna have to talk to my client. You have to change the way you behave, because you're saying you wanna do this, but you are the problem. They are not the problem.
It's so hard to let go of some of the financial stuff, but like, if you don't, you can't get over here.
Why is my client approving the invoice? He's got a staff of 3 or 4 people in accounting and controller. Why is he approving the invoices to pay out? They know what to do. They know how much cash there is they've been doing that for 30 years. So he should not even spend a minute on it. He should rely on them. Well, he's the problem. Doesn't want to listen. He's the problem. And he's not listening to me today, I know that.
That's funny.
I would say-
Send him the recording.
Oh, I told him.
I would say when you hire someone for a position, you have to trust that they are gonna be able to fulfill a position. And if you don't trust them, then they're probably not the right person for that position as well. So we manage, so say if we're sitting in that controller role or a fractional CFO role for any company, our clients have a team underneath them that's there on their base. And I need to trust those 3 or 4 staff accountants, senior accountants, account managers to know that they're doing their job. Once you break that trust, then it gets hard to do all those accounting functions properly.
Yeah.
So you need to identify if this person, you hired to do this role, they can't do that role, you have to kind of, it's hard, but cut the cord, find someone else that's gonna go and fill that role.
Question over there too.
Yeah, so I think one of the hard parts too is that business owners and CEOs probably don't, in a lot of cases, don't have a lot of finance experience, so there's an education process that they need to undertake too, and if you just have a controller, that may not be part of their function, or that may not be something they're good at. So I guess a question for you guys would be, do you have kind of a set of reporting or a dashboard that you would give to business owners and people on the call and here in this room that could think about in terms of how do you start learning about managing the finance end of your company and the important metrics for the finance, in the financials that go along with also all the things they're doing on a day-to-day basis?
I think that's a loaded question. So
That's why I asked it.
Next question, please.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, is there like?
It's not as,
Oh, go ahead.
it depends on what you wanna do with your business. Like if some people are just, okay, I'm a $5 million company, I'm gonna stay this $5 million company, and that's where I wanna stand. Once you wanna start to grow, you have to figure out as an owner of what you wanna get to, and then find that right person to kind of get you to that place. I don't think there's a set checklist that would be across broad spectrum that would say you need to make sure you have X, Y, and Z. You need to make sure that someone knows your industry if you want to grow, knows who you're going against, and knows how to get your financials and get you to get there. A lot of that, to be fair, is more the CEO's job than the CFO's job. The CFO can tell you for manufacturing, what's the average price of this property? What's the average price of this? And then where are we going? Where's our vendors and what other vendors are out there, and how can we, leverage that to get better costs? That's really that the contract reevaluation and figuring out value that's CFO's job. The CEO should be the one going out there to try to, make sure the company's running well and trying to get to where you want it to go to.
There's still, I agree 100%, but in your case, for your clients, as a banker, from that function, every company should have a basics, right? There's like the financials 101, reporting 101, that should be there. It's already not there. I mean, you see it every day, right? You get half-baked, financials. And so that should be there, right? And so once you're there, I agree with Nick that to improve the business, then it really depends on where the business is, right? If cash flow is an issue, if growth is an issue, is selling, what is the purpose? Where are we going here? And then that's where it becomes a little bit different.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems I see, people want to jump from that left side of the screen to the right side of the screen and completely ignore the middle side.
Yeah.
And really, you need to make sure you go that way because you're going to overpay for something that you're not getting that service out of. So if you're looking for that CFO to help you with certain things, but you don't have that middle side to do the accounting, well, now you're overpaying for CFO because you have to worry about all that accounting spectrum. So you really need to make sure you grow your business and as those functions go, or else you're not really gonna be paying.
I find interesting that all of us here are doing this to make money, but nobody wants to focus on this.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to sell better, wants to make a better product, but nobody wants to pay. Everybody wants a super cool website and willing to pay for a nice website, but you go and you say, I'm gonna improve your financials. Nobody wants to pay for it, but everybody wants to make money. And I think that's the problem, right? And you need to invest just like you're investing in your productions or your people in productions or business development and things like this. You got to invest in the financial function depending on what is your goal in the business.
I think you're gonna pay more for everything if you don't have solid
Yeah, I
financials to
agree.
start with. You're gonna pay more on the CPA services at year end, because
Yep.
you're gonna be paying a tax accountant $250 an hour to clean up your books, to
Yep.
file your taxes. I mean, it could go on and on and on. So-
And look at the cost of a chapter 11, if you want to go that far,
Right.
right? I mean, bankruptcy costs a fortune. And most of the time, a lot of companies, they could avoid it. And most of the time it's because there was a miss somewhere. I mean, I'm not talking about the industry falling, and things like this, but when a company whose a sound just fails, there's usually signs before that were ignored.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, just to finish on, during COVID, we heard a lot of companies complaining about COVID and failing. COVID was not the issue. They were failing before, but they just ignored it. And then suddenly they lose a couple of months of sales and they go down. I mean, that should never ever happened, right? Because a sound business should say, okay, I've got some reserve, I'm gonna go through the storm and I'll come back stronger. Well, if you have a good controller, a good CFO, then you can start saying, okay, I've got a problem coming my way, I have the reserve, and then you can plan for it.
Yeah, I'll say if you don't have a budget or a forecast or something along those lines, you're already doing your business a disservice. Because you have nothing to benchmark yourself against, say, hold yourself accountable.
Yep.
So you always want to make sure you have something that baseline, this is how I should be performing. If I'm not performing like that, why? And how do we audible?
Yep.
Where we need to go. So that'd be, if I have one takeaway out of this, do a budget for your business and make sure you follow towards.
Yeah, you're accountable
those
to it.
goals. Yeah.
You also said that most small business, medium businesses, privately held, this is their retirement.
Yep.
So if you don't do this, you are taking from your retirement
Yep,
Yes.
exactly.
every day.
Yeah,
Yep.
every day.
And that's one thing that I always say too, is if you're looking to exit in a certain amount of time, like our fees, I usually consider them like a transactional expense. So when you sell, they get your EBITDA and they give you a multiple, right? And so when you sell, sometimes you back out all these expenses that people may be running through their business that technically may not be business expenses or other transactions that you had because you wanted it, but the business didn't need it. And sometimes in our instances, it would be our fees. We're just helping you to get ready to sell versus you didn't need us in your day-to-day function. So you get to back out those fees so it doesn't hurt your multiple at the end. So that's another thing to think about.
How does the conversation change if you're passing your business on to next gen? And now you've got
Good
quasi
question.
two people in the leadership role, one's more an apprentice.
Yeah.
But that transition, how does your engagement change or?
So
Speak to that.
we've done a few transitions and we help people understand, what is their exit planning.
Yes.
And there's a piece about the knowledge that needs to be transferred from one generation to the other, but also the systems. Also taking into account what is the next generation expecting.
Yeah.
So that has to be put in the middle and discussed on top of the financials.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a lot of estate planning.
Yes.
So you need to, say you're a corporation, you have all the stock, what's the value of that stock and what does, the exemptions look like right now? And are those gonna change depending on who's sitting in the presidency and how that's gonna flow through Congress and all that? So you wanna make sure that, one, the exemption is very high right now, abnormally high for what's been historically. So if you wanna make a transition, it might be good to kind of not maybe gifting stock or something along those lines, or put it in a trust, so certain things. Certain trusts you have appreciation, it goes in there at a value, and then as it appreciates, it doesn't hurt your estate anymore. So you definitely want to talk to a lawyer to make sure that you have the right legal entity structure to be able to offload something. But from an accounting function, if you, as a business owner that's been doing it for 30 years, are the only one that's been in the accounting function, you're doing your family now a disservice because they don't know how it acts. They don't know that you spend X amount with this vendor all the time, and what those units of property cost and you're buying it from them. So you have to, get them up to speed, get them entangled into those accounting functions.
Also reduce the value of the business if that's the case, because you know that the next buyer or the next generation might not be able to do it. So then you look at what are my future expenses? Well, I need to have a bookkeeper, controller, CFO cost, then the value goes down because you're gonna have to pay for it.
Also depends on the business. Sometimes the person is the business. So how do you obtain value to the person that is the business versus another type of industry that maybe, is not so sole dependent on that one owner. So.
And I think it's okay for a business owner to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, I've got to find somebody to help me because I know my industry, I know my product, I don't know that part of the business. And got a feeling that I think that a lot of businesses that are generational, they keep that function because they don't trust, they're not sure how, right? They don't
Yes.
trust. They have to admit, I need to trust somebody, I don't know how to do it, I need to trust somebody to do it. And then that's how it's going to improve that function, and it's going to help increase the value and passing it to the next generation, because the next generation has to focus on the business, on catching up. So at least that part is taken care of. And maybe the next generation wants to focus just on that function because that's what they like and they went to college for, whatever it is.
Can I just add to that of like understanding, like giving up the reins type of thing? A lot of times we say trust but verify. So like if you're giving up those accounting duties, for instance, but you have the proper internal controls in place, you can have a higher degree of confidence in what that person is doing.
Hands everywhere. Let's go first.
Yeah, I'm just hearing you say like part of your value is really untying the knot or identifying duplicative functions. Would that be kind of accurate as you come into a business and get to know it? Relative to maybe the CEO spending their time on the CFO side or the CFO spending time in controller or accounts payable or AR side of things. Is that part of your value to kind of identify efficiencies? Coming in as a CFO from the outside.
Absolutely. I'm going through that right now with the client where, they had the same CFOs in place for a while and then retiring. So we stepped in and you kind of look under the hood and you say, well, it's been the same functions forever. We gotta shake this up a little bit and get it more to the 2025 to the world versus the 2000s. So we'll go through and improve accounting efficiencies, figure out what works best with the company's COO, who's maybe doing some other function, the CFO is maybe doing some COO functions, and really try and steer it in that one direction. Because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you have someone else going in there to kind of tell you how this works out we do a lot of different industries, so we know how certain things work in different industries. And say, this is how it should work for here. This is how it should work when you're in this seat. This is how it should work when you're in that seat. Reorganize those functions at the C-suite level or just the accounting spectrum level, whatever it is.
The other question we had is, according to your spectrum of functions, are there people out there that can fill a controller / CFO role?
I think so.
There's always unicorns out there.
Yes.
Perform both functions.
Yeah.
We're all humans, right? So we all have skills, I think right now we're all humans, it'll change, but we all have different skills, different personality. And, you get people who actually have the talent to, be that controller, CFO.
Listen, you can have a very strong controller who knows accounting well, that can go more that CFO finance, like that first one. But they're probably most likely not gonna go to your CFO business insights, which is more that non-financial, metrics and stuff along those lines. So they may be able to make sure you won't have a single audit adjustment if you're doing audit. But if they need to negotiate contracts for you and stuff along those lines, they probably don't have that knowledge to be able to do so.
A business will need a CFO more from an M&A perspective because they want to buy or sell something like this. It's unlikely you can have a very accountant technician who's going to spend hours, right, on dividend credits and amortization and things like this, because they're more into, I'm going to call all the private equity in the world and try to sell the company, right? Doesn't mean that it can do it or she can do it, but it's a different approach. And it goes back to what does the business need and where are they in that life cycle?
One question. This is such a timely topic for me. My current controller's last day is tomorrow. My top choice second interview is today. Top choice has his CMA. Current controller has his CPA. Talk to me about a little bit of the difference there. And any silver bullet interview question I should ask him today to ensure that I'm picking the right person, because I've put him through, I've grilled him, he's done the in-person, passed my test. So today I'm having to meet my 2 business partners and owners. And everything's looking good, but it's such an important position. It's definitely, we stay in the lane of the controller. And my current controller is leaving because he does do CFO duties too, and he's bored. He wants CFO.
Exactly.
So what is he doing? He's starting his own business, his own accounting firm, and he's gonna offer fractional CFO duties. And of course he wanted
It's a
to.
bad idea. It's a bad idea.
Of course, he wants me to, he wants to partner with me and do fractional CFO work. And I said, no, I really want a full-time controller. That's what I feel like my business needs. So anyway, long story short, CMA versus CPA, can you talk to me a little bit more there? And what silver bullet interview question can you give me today that I didn't think of asking him that I should?
Yeah, so CMA is your certified managerial accountant, right? So that's more accounting functions, more like private accounting, what you're talking about. And the CPA is more in public accounting, which means don't get me wrong, CPA is a lot harder to get than CMA. But it's different skill set. Depending on what they've done historically. It all goes back to the resume. I don't care if the CPA, CMA, no certification at all. Why are they qualified for that position? And I would look at it more that way than credentials. So what did they do before? Were they in that controllership role before? What size company, what industry, what did their accounting team look like? What pain points they have at their previous employer and why are they leaving there to go somewhere else? What are they looking to go to in their own, themselves?
Journey.
So, because you don't want to hire someone now, invest all this time in the next 2 years, and they use you as a leapfrog to go somewhere else. So what are they trying to do? Are they going to grow with your company?
Okay. I also am looking because we have 2 accounting admins that will be supporting this person and current controller, not a strong manager of people.
That's why it's important to know what that person's
At
team
all.
looked like before and what their
Exactly.
function was in there.
Which
So-
isn't uncommon. I feel like oftentimes, at least the controllers that have worked for me are not strong managers of people. They're so in the books and financial side of it.
Like we said earlier, the controller going towards CFO, you get the manager going towards a leader. If that person if the person you're interviewing are not good managers, leaders, they can teach people, they can respect people, then it's not the person you want.
Yeah.
Because you need somebody who's going to talk to you as a partner, and you want somebody who's going to talk to to the team as a leader,
Exactly.
right, or as a manager. To Nick's point, that the person, based on the resume, you're going to see if they get the qualifications or not. CMA, CPA, know nothing. The experience is going to tell you, and you call a couple of references, they're going to tell you if they know what they're doing. The personality, what they want to do in their own journey. I agree with Nick. If that person tells you, I want to become the CFO within 2 years, and you're not ready for it, that means you're gonna lose that person in a few years. So you're gonna invest, because nobody can catch up in a week, right? So that person's, you're gonna need to invest in that person for 3-6 months before you actually get to a point where you feel that you get a good partner, business partner, not business partner, but what I mean. And if that person leaves in a year and a half from now, then you gotta start all over again.
Did you have anyone who's technically sound in accounting ask many questions?
Oh, wait, say it again, anyone's,
Anyone's technically sound in accounting ask any questions, so. If you're, I don't know, tax
you're looking at
advisor.
her. Me and my HR,
Yeah.
we,
So
and we have a
insurance,
ton of
right? So you're in-
assessment tools too, so we put them through a million aptitude tests, and so I feel really good there, and overall a very strong fit for our manager leadership position and possesses the Excel, all the prowess there. Anyway, and he's very strong, manager of people. So he's my first choice. He doesn't know insurance,
Doesn't matter.
so that's okay. I mean,
It doesn't matter, because you need to know insurance.
I know, he doesn't know insurance accounting, but he knows accounting, so it's gonna be a little bit of a learning curve there, but this is the aptitude should be okay. Okay, thank you. It's just, it's an important role, and I'm really glad you guys are putting this on today.
Joe, I was just like, you guys have talked about this a little bit, but like you said, like for someone like me, if you hire more salespeople, the return is more sales, or you buy equipment, you can do more work. Like, so if you do invest in this, like what are some things you've seen with companies you guys have worked with where like somebody like myself who's imploring and I, half-ass this type of stuff because I have to. How do you, what do you see?
If you get a good controller, CFO, right, that person should make you money. Not in the sense of sales or things like this, but negotiating a better financing on equipment, telling you need a line of credit, and then go to our banking friends here and negotiate. Wake up, we're talking about you. Negotiate a better rate, right? Things like this, and you're gonna make more money. Somebody who's gonna come save some of your time on coming to you and says, cash flow is good, cash flow is bad. All the things that you don't have the time to do, that's gonna save some of your time and make better decisions. To me, that's what you're looking for.
A lot of times when you go on the fractional route, someone who has an industry expertise in your industry, right? So we'll know what those set price points are on certain items and can help you maybe negotiate with your and what that is, or let you know on the flip side, you're not charging enough and you need to charge more, or you're overpaying for XYZ positions. This is what that looks like. We do a lot of benchmarking. We have like a managerial report that first few pages are kind of like your financials written out. I always say written out in English so you can understand them. They're just numbers. Then we go into the financials and we have dashboards for the financial, non-financial sides. So they're updated as quickly as that first row updates things, those dashboards can be updated. It's just live data to act on. Tends to make you a lot more money than you think.
And there's so many good tools now for getting reports, from, Power BI and all those things, right? If you have a controller or CFO that kind of start getting you all those KPIs that you don't get a chance to look at, and then, you start looking at them, it takes time, right? You need to get there. Then that's how you start saving money. So I agree with him. If somebody can tell you that your margin can be increased a little bit because you can increase those prices and things like this, that function is paid off.
You said, what's your accounting team look like right now?
We are doing some work with Jack and Casey, because we're switching to a
Oh,
new
so he's the one
ERP.
you were talking about.
No. I would have not there.
And then in our different departments, we have people that do billing and collections and among other things.
Yeah.
So it's a,
So it sounds like you may not have an accurate P&L month over month because you're probably not, you're not doing your job costing and making sure things are hitting the right periods. So you're more managing the cash per se than you are knowing like your July might have been great, but those deposits came in August. You're gonna think now you had a great August or something along those lines. If you look, someone outside looking in, seeing how those financial statements look, so. It'd be good for you to kind of understand job costing That's gonna let you know how much you're making on each island. You guys doing about costing?
Yeah, what our whip is a tough thing
Whip
for
is-
us.
yeah.
With our system is, our job costing.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like I said, I kind of live in that middle area barely just because I have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just.
Well, that's the whole thing to think of. If you're barely in that middle area, does it make sense, fractionally have him come on and take those 40 hours a month that you're doing that, and now you get to focus on other areas of your business, and he can worry about, going through and making sure that your financials are sound and give you some advice to work on there.
Mhm.
That's where that's where you're gonna make your money.
It was timely for Jacques because I was actually texting a client about their financial statements. But the reality is a commercial lender, we want to work with our borrowers to focus on their debt strategy. Do they need to buy new equipment? Do they need a line of credit? What's their capital planning look like? And for us to have quality financial statements is critical to truly understand. I had a mentor early in my career teach me that cash flow is the lifeblood of a business, right? So if you're going to go to the cardiologist, they're going to want an EKG, they're going to want a workup to understand your situation. It's the same with financial statements. It helps the lender understand the full financial situation. And if you aren't at a position where you can do something, how do you get to that position where you can maybe acquire that next company or you can acquire that piece of equipment you need, stuff like that.
And I feel like covenant's a four-letter word for most business owners, so.
Yeah.
They don't. So a lot of times as a business, when you're going out and getting a loan, you look at how much money can I get and what's the rate? They don't understand the other 30 pages that they're telling you about what certain metrics are required for you to keep in line with your bank. Once again, they're usually managing their cash, so it's important to know if you're going down a track and it's going in that direction, how do we alter that to make sure all these bankers in this room are happy where we are, and keep our debt where it is and not try and pull anything from us.
In 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just looked at that, so.
Any
Any closing questions?
questions? Look, you
If
wanna,
not, do we email out like our?
I'll tell you what we're
Ask
gonna
any
do. So
questions.
I'm gonna thank you very much. You guys did a great job. We appreciate it. On the slides, and we'll send those, we have a definition of each one of those roles. And for a few minutes, I'll hold you guys. We'd love to have your surveys. And we'd love to know, what would you like? And if we do this again, which there seems to be an interest, what topics on finances would you like for the next series, the next one in this next couple of series? Because we're looking to build our programs for next year. And if I have some door prizes, and Brooke, for those of you on Zoom, she'll put the survey in there. So let us know what you thought about today, what you'd like us to focus in on next year, whether ideally in the financial services, but also other programs, because we're going to be getting ready to do that. And then we'll take a little bit of a break. Everybody have a nice holiday, and then we'll have our New Year party in January. And we do have some nice door prizes. Since we're talking money, I have a bag of money, which is chocolates, and a highly coveted, hard to come by IFOB hat. We have Baker Newman Noyce brought us a lovely blanket.